The sun has gone down at Hangman's Hill, and the ghost at Misery Corner isn't walking tonight. So, welcome to the Weird Tales radio show, your weekly fix of ghost stories, urban myths, magic, and folklore. And now, here's your host, writer, award-winning journalist, best-selling author, and sometime werewolf hunter, Charles Christian.
Hello and welcome to episode 44 of the Weird Tales radio show podcast. We're going to be looking at St. Nicholas's Day, which is the 6th of December. We're also going to be talking about the Krampus. We've got a bit of vampire myth busting. But first, we're going deep beneath the bowels of the earth as we go on a trip beneath the city of Norwich. And here's Janie, and Janie's going to talk about our recent subterranean trip through the bowels of Norwich.
Hello, yes, I am. And wasn't it exciting?
It was.
Yes, and it was a lovely surprise visit because I knew nothing about it. I just got something on social media about tours beneath Norwich and newly discovered tunnels, and obviously that piqued my interest. And then I immediately saw that there were no spaces left. The minute they had become available, the tours in this particular unknown under part of Norwich, they're gone. Mm-hmm. People grabbed them. So I put our names down on a waiting list. Obviously, I was intrigued because the social media blurb was talked about eerie prison cells and hidden streets.
Yes.
And I love all that sort of feeling that they, they haven't been Disney-fied. They have stayed in the same condition almost from when the last people tottered out of there in the 16th, 17th, 18th century. Fascinating. And, of course, tunnels were mentioned, as in secret tunnels and tunnels that possibly may have led to the castle, which Norwich Castle was just across the road. So that's how it happened, and luckily within a few weeks they let some more tickets out for tours.
Yes,
and we got our tickets. And off we went to a cafe, actually. It was something called Kinder Cafe in Norwich, just across from the Castle Mound, as I mentioned. And what had happened, again, this was a fascinating part of it, really, was that Kinder Cafe had taken over.
Kinder Cafe are a charity, aren't they?
That's right, yes. I think it's called The Missing Kind, and it is about producing events and support for people who need help with homelessness or socialising or any other issues. And the cafe is very nice, perfectly commercial, lovely space, but they have other spaces there where people can meet and plan things of a good nature.
Yes.
And other facilities there as well. But essentially, that obviously was by the by. They had not long taken over the lease of this particular property that had previously been Pond's shoe shop.
Yes.
And that's very, very, very old. I'm not quite sure of the dates, but a very old shoe retail and obviously previously manufacturing.
Yes,
site.
Indeed. They mentioned that.
Yeah, I can't.
There were still some customers or people who...
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Someone who had his first shoes handmade there when he was a baby and had his last pair of shoes made that he was buried in.
My
quite
goodness,
recently.
do you know, I don't think I quite
Picked that
picked
bit
up on
yes.
that.
Yes, I think the point for our listeners is that Norwich used to be a centre of a thriving shoemaking industry.
Yes,
And
that's right.
there were big factories there, but there were also small bespoke outfits such as Pons, who would not only sell you the shoes but make them for you if you had the readies to part with them.
Yeah. So I think they did a bit of clearing in the shop generally, and then they realised from their lease, this is the cafe, that they had a storeroom, and they thought, obviously, quite useful.
Yeah.
We'll go and have a look. There's the door. Pull back the bolts, and it was crammed floor to ceiling with Pons shoe paraphernalia, old shoe lasts and leather and everything you would expect from a very, very, very long period of having a shoe shop, including, I do remember this part, many of the X-ray machines that were very popular.
Yes. They were those delightful things they had in the 30s, 40s and through till the 50s.
They do, yeah.
You stood there and you could have got an X-ray of your feet. And
I think that they went right through to was it even more than the 50s?
Late 50s, I think
Was it
it
late
stopped.
50s? Yeah.
It was
Then they started to realise it probably wasn't the best idea.
Yes, it was
every
actually
6 months give your child an X-ray of
Well, it was
their
actually
feet.
the staff who were most exposed to it because they were next to the machines all the time. So every time everybody went in there,
course, yeah.
the staff got zapped.
Yeah. They probably had on, for protection, a pair of, an apron, probably, a cloth apron or something. Well, they didn't know, did they?
No, they didn't know.
No, they didn't know. But as somebody pointed out, why actually would you need an X-ray machine to see whether shoes fitted? Because it's obviously completely possible just to, even
Waggle
with
your
a child,
toes and
to
see.
push your fingers on the shoe and see whether the
Yes.
child's feet are cramped or if
Yep.
there's space. You know, I think it was just showing off, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Really.
There used to be one of those in a shoe shop when I used to come home from school, and every day me and my mate, we'd pop in there and X-ray our feet. Which explains the 6 toes.
Yes. I wonder if it's possible to do a class action on that, if anything like that. Anyway. Yes, so they found this storeroom, which was exciting enough, full of all this stuff, and started to clear it out. And apparently it took about 6 people 2 weeks to clear out the debris of ages there. And when they'd cleared it out, they found at the back another door. Bolted and of some age, obviously. And that's when they thought, let's have a look down there, opened that up and found a flight of steps downwards.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the flight of steps that we took
Yes.
on this very tour, downwards into yet another room, which clearly from the bricks, which were probably
Yes.
17th century bricks, they can tell these things, 17th century beams, and just generally
They dated that beam, I think, about the year 1600.
Yes.
It was
Yeah.
very long oak beam running across the ceiling.
Yeah. And it apparently had been a workroom, quite clearly for weavers, which I think we're talking about wool here, being, again, a major trade and industry.
Linen as well.
Linen as well. And so the weavers
Yes.
had special windows, which were long and narrow,
Yes.
but horizontally. So
Very wide, yes, I think that's the
Very
word.
wide.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they got the maximum daylight so they could keep working at their looms as long as possible.
because apparently they would not be wanting to use candles, because candles were made out of tallow, which is obviously animal fat. That's the only
Yes.
material they had to make them, and they spluttered a lot.
Yes.
Because it was animal fat. And that wasn't very good for having close to your cloths, linens,
Well, there'd be a fire risk,
whatever.
but also
It would
you wouldn't
be,
want
but-
your cloth smelling of burnt pig.
Exactly. Plus, you'd get little grease marks on
Right,
it.
yes.
Anyway, we digress. And the extraordinary thing was, though, that there was a massive window. Well, it wasn't that big because the room wasn't that big, to be fair, but very long
Yes.
length of the room. That opened out into darkness because that room had once opened out onto a yard, but subsequently had been all built over.
They'd built in front of it and built over it.
And built over it. And now that was the thing I did catch it, but I wonder if you got more of it because you understand these things much more. But historian, that it was all something to do with Normans when they came and took over Norwich, and basically built an enormous ditch.
They built what's known
Why?
as a Motte and Bailey castle,
Yeah.
which is essentially you dig a deep ditch for defensive purposes, and all the spoil that you dig out, you pile up in the middle as a great big mound.
Right, where
which
the castle is now.
Which you put the castle
on the top.
And again, for people who haven't visited Norwich, the castle remains very prominent and high, looming above the city. And as a result of that, they cleared all the area that had been occupation in front of it. But then as time moved on and the Normans moved off and the castle ceased to be a fort, the town expanded and started expanding over the clear ground that had been surrounding the ditch. And so it was possible to build in front of it. The street line edged forward.
Yeah, so building below the ground level, as it were. They were building in the ditch.
They were building in the ditch, but then other parts were built up and new buildings were put in front of it.
Yeah. Yes. So that again was a little bit like an archaeological dig in a way, because the lower you went, that was what I found interesting. You went down
Back in time.
Back in time, exactly.
Yes.
It's like a little time capsule. Yeah. So that was that room, and that was interesting enough. But yeah, then the next door, flight of stairs down, narrow, obviously, and winding, and dark, and much colder because we're very low down now.
Yes.
There's yet another opened out into another area.
It's like a little yard.
Yeah, yeah. Which, again, was brick, red brick, of very old
Yes.
nature. And I think some flint, or some flint let into the walls in some places.
Yes.
But anyway, what it clearly was at one point was a street. Because
A little lane with
a little lane it must
with
have been.
shops.
Because it has some shops. And it had an undercroft. And it had a little room that had bars across it as well, as if it had been a mini clink to throw in ne'er-do-wells. And a super old wooden door, which did lend itself to well, it had a great lock on it, so
Yes.
yes, it looked like it was probably something like that. But the extraordinarily moving part, I think, was this shop that was still there in its entirety. It had the brickwork around it as the door. Obviously, it didn't have a door on it, but it had a shop window. And you step down into it again, worn old brick, low ceiling, of course, tiny little fireplace, and actually outside of the shop, a drain. So clearly where that would have been the only place that they would have been able to throw
yes.
sewage. So instantly got the feeling that that was not a particularly nice place to work or to be, and they would have probably lived there as well.
Yeah.
And there were rooms off it, but a definite feeling that people had not long left there because, of course, almost nothing had been disturbed. And I think that was the beauty part, that you got this real feeling of a sense of how it had been used, and then nothing had much changed in the centuries
it had just been
afterwards.
abandoned.
Yeah. And so that was obviously a possible eerie prison cell. But out the back of by the side of the prison cell, or was it at the back of by the side of the prison cell, there was a tunnel.
There was.
Incredibly full of debris, spoil, broken bricks, and it went off into the distance where you couldn't see the back of it, really, could you? But unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, it didn't go in the right direction for the castle.
No, because there was a legend that there was a secret tunnel leading from the castle mound to the town, which is where this was, and even a suggestion that because in later years the castle became the county jail at the top.
Ooh, I bet there's some
lovely
stuff going on there.
And the legend was that what the prison warder, the governor, had a secret tunnel so he could get across to the castle without being seen or accosted by any villains who might want to harm him. There was the other little bit that they mentioned that at one stage the city owned the ditch and the county owned the castle at the top. So when it came to executions, if you were being executed by the county, you were hung from the city walls, and if you were being executed by the city, you were hung in the ditch. As the tour guide said, the accommodation where we were going through would have had a great view of the executions.
Yes. There's more.
There's more.
There's more. Because, extraordinarily enough, they did find yet another door at the back of this area, and asked if we'd like to go any further down. Of course, we naturally said, yes, definitely. And further down the steps, it opened out into yet another level. It got very confusing because obviously you can't work out where daylight is. There is no daylight. You can't work out what level you're on because all these rooms and areas and yards are higgledy-piggledy. They're so adapted and changed and different, like I say, archaeology.
And the street levels are different
as
well.
Yes, all the
street
levels
level that we went into, one of those lanes we went along, then came out at another street that's at a lower level. So you lose your sense of direction, yes.
Yes, so you're going down another set of steps. There was another small tunnel, or alleyway, I should say, which perhaps once was used to access some of these shops and yards and things. And hidden behind some wooden doors, they found, yes, another tunnel. This is a fairly recent find, which is quite extraordinary. That points directly towards the castle.
Yeah,
So,
appears to go straight under what the present-day road to the castle. Yes.
So, unfortunately, they can't excavate them because they're so historic. Every piece that was taken out would have to be examined, and it would take millions of pounds to fund it, and there isn't the available money. But also, apparently, a historian has been quoted as saying there is a minimum of 60 other areas like this in Norwich.
Yes.
With a top number that wouldn't surprise him of about 200, which again is believable,
Yes.
because if you think it was an enormous ditch, it's an ancient town.
It was also a walled city, and as
And
again
a
they
large
mentioned,
walled city,
a large,
very large one.
Well, at one stage, Norwich was the second city in England in terms of size, and very wealthy. But as was the way in those days, all the building development work had to be done within the city walls.
Yes.
So you got some room for going up, but not skyscrapers, because they didn't have the technology. So they would cram closer and closer together. Lanes would get narrower and narrower, and you'd go down and dig out cellars, and people would live in these subterranean little cellars and warrens.
It's lucky they're all undernourished and therefore quite small. As they just wouldn't have fitted.
Oh, exactly. Yes, you couldn't have today's 8XL size people going down those lanes. They'd never move.
No, they'd be wedged,
Yeah.
blocked.
And we have a tale of a ghostly fiddler, don't we?
Oh, yes.
One of those.
What was that?
It's one of
about?
those tales, we've had them before on this show, with where there's a tunnel or a legend of a tunnel, and some poor soul is cajoled into going down it to explore by making a noise, playing bagpipes, playing a bugle, banging a drum, or in this case playing a fiddle, while other people follow the sound above ground. And this case, the fiddler and his dog went down there and played their fiddle and were never seen again.
Probably a little bit made up, but
I think so.
that's a good tale.
It's a good tale.
Yeah. So that was it, really. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And
it was absolutely
fascinating and well worth
Yeah.
doing it. And a very good storyteller who was leading the tour.
Extraordinarily good guide. She knew her onions.
She did indeed.
Definitely, which did make it. She could answer any question, and clearly was extremely passionate about them.
Yes.
As you would be.
And things to note, if you are going during the colder months of the year, wrap up well, because it really does get colder and colder as you go down there.
Yes.
And book in advance. Unlikely to get in if you just turn up on spec. And Janie, you've got a website or some contact details people can...
there's a website which is www.missingkind.org. Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one, but if you just think missing, as in missing in action, missing kind, one word. And there's a telephone number, which is obviously UK, 01 603 850 309. So, yeah, well worth going and seeing and experiencing.
And you get a free cup of coffee at the end.
Oh,
of it,
yes,
so-
should have mentioned that.
Yep.
Free tea and coffee, and they do nice cakes.
They did indeed. What more could you want? Ancient history and cake.
Well, I don't know. Possibly a sausage roll.
Thank you, Janie.
Something wicked this way comes. Weird Harvest Press presents Harvest Hymns, the sweet fruits and twisted roots of folk horror. A 2-volume set of books investigating the music of folk horror, featuring contributions from some of the biggest names in the field. Candia McCormack, Johnny Trunk, Maddie Pryor, Sharon Krause, Jim Jupp and Kemper Norton, to name just a few. Available now via lulu.com. 100% of all Weird Harvest Press profits are donated to wildlife charities.
Welcome, fool. You have come of your own free will to the appointed place. It is time to keep your appointment with the Wicker Man. The Wicker Man.
6th of December. What does that mean to you?
It's very much the day before the 7th.
That's good. That's good. It's also St. Nicholas's Day. And this is St. Nicholas as in St. Nick, as in one
Father
of these...
Christmas.
One of the sources of Father Christmas.
Oh,
Yes.
Oh, I thought it was 25th of December, his day.
Well, that's where it gets a bit complicated. We're dealing with a bit of the Reformation gets in the way from St. Nicholas, and the 6th of December used to be a big thing in Catholic times before the Reformation. And the 6th is still a big day in parts of Europe, the Netherlands, Scandinavia, places like that, where St. Nicholas arrives. And did they give presents on some of those days as well? And
Crikey, they get 2 Christmases.
They get 2 Christmases. They do indeed. And
good for the retailers.
oh, yes. St. Nicholas is semi-legendary, as in the sense he probably was a real person. And he was the Bishop of Myra in what is now Turkey. And he was independently wealthy, had rich parents, and became well known for, I'm quite sure how you become well known for this, for secret gift giving. His original secret, Santa. And his most famous exploit was dropping purses of gold coins through the windows of 3 young women. This was because their father was poor and could not afford to pay dowries for all of them, so was planning to put them into a life of prostitution.
Right.
Which tends to suggest that the 4th century career opportunities for young women were pretty bad. Anyway, St. Nicholas popped the coins through, so there was money for dowries, and they all were able to marry, and all lived happily ever after. And the father repented.
Right. It just struck me, my childhood, one of the most exciting things was on the Christmas tree, bags of coins.
That's where it comes from.
Which obviously were chocolate of a slightly cheap and nasty tasting nature, but we didn't care.
We didn't care. No. And it was always half melted by the time you'd prize the 2 bits of foil off them. Yep, that's where that comes from. And as a result of that, St. Nicholas became the patron saint of children for saving young people from a fate worse than death. However,
There's more.
there's more.
Got me a bit interested now.
There's a dark side, because Santa has an evil little helper. St. Nicholas, this is. You know the idea that Santa Claus or St. Nicholas brings gifts to reward good little boys and girls. Well, he also has a companion who punishes naughty boys and girls. Oh, yes. In Netherlands and Luxembourg and parts of Belgium, he's called Zwarte Piet, or Black Peter. This has become slightly politically incorrect in recent times, because the person playing Black Peter in the parades is quite clearly a white person wearing blackface makeup and a frizzy wig. However, in earlier times, he was quite clearly a demon, a black evil demon on a chain that St. Nicholas had tamed and made his servant. And the best example of the demonic connection is the Krampus, which you
yes,
painted.
Of course.
And there's no mistaking the symbolism of the Krampus with giant, snaggletooth, hairy goat horns, cloven hoof, long red tooth.
And a very large dagger in his hand. Gives the game away a bit.
No, it's actually
it's
a birch for beating. Both he and Black Peter in the parades carry birch branches where they jovially run out and whack people over the head with it. But in the old days, this was supposedly he used to whip naughty children.
Right.
And Krampus also wears change, which apparently symbolises the binding of the devil by the Christian church.
Well.
Yeah. Anyway.
Not quite the childhood people experience today.
No,
Things
it's not.
have improved a tad.
It has indeed. And both Krampus and Black Peter used to lurk at the top of chimneys listening below, and they could work out who were the naughty boys and girls, and they would tell
Yeah.
St. Nicholas. And then when St. Nicholas came a-calling, St. Nicholas would be pulling presents from his sack to give to the little good children, and Krampus would be bundling the naughty children into his own sack to carry them off to either drown them or eat them, or possibly drown them and eat them.
They didn't mess about, did they?
They
It's
didn't.
like,
No, you didn't have any choice there. So,
This is where things have gone sadly wrong, I feel, the discipline of the younger generation.
yes, they need pushing in sacks and
Pushing
eating.
in sacks and eating.
That'll be a lesson they'll
Yeah.
never forget.
Yeah, that would make a big impression on their mind. And
But for a short time.
sorry?
For a short time,
For a
until they
short
were
time, yes.
devoured.
Yes.
And so there we have the dark side of St. Nicholas Day, the 6th of December.
Wonderful. If you want to grow your business, save time using the latest tech, and look great online, Weird Appeal Digital can help. We have a free, yes, that's free download listing 40 digital tools, apps and resources to help you grow your brand, promote your project, generate leads and reach your audience. Just go to www.appeal.digital/weirdtales for smart, effective digital design, and your free download, go to www.appeal.digital/weirdtales.
That's it. We're almost out of time. But before we go, one final story. Thanks to Fortean Times for finding this one. And this is a story about the Monmouth vampire, which made local headlines in Wales. It's part of Gwent, I believe, in 1980, when a motorist said late at night they were driving past a graveyard when a cloaked figure came staggering out of the cemetery gates. Vampires, perhaps. However, the truth is now out. Anybody remember the band, the punk band, The Damned? You know, Captain Sensible, the drummer, Rat Scabies, and of course the vocalist, Dave Vanian, who back in those days, the 70s and early 80s, had a bit of a penchant for vampire-type outfits, the Bram Stoker Dracula look. Well, it turns out it was him. He says that they'd been recording the band's Black album at the Rockfield Studios in Monmouth when he decided to step out for some fresh air one moonlit night. It was very chilly and I was wearing an ankle-length wool cloak to keep warm, as you do. I went for a walk to the local graveyard, which was a mile down the road. I walked around, and as I left and started heading back up the lane to the studio, I was caught in the headlights of a passing Mini. I noticed it suddenly swerved almost off the road and then screamed off round the bend. The next few days the story appeared in the local papers that a woman claimed to have seen a vampire coming out of the cemetery. I decided to say nothing. I became an urban legend in my own right. However, I suppose now is the time to confess that it was me. It could well just be a coincidence that the band's latest album, Evil Spirits, was released earlier this autumn, the time he made his statement. So there you have it. Another bit of urban myth-busting. There ain't no vampires at Rockfield in Monmouth. Just occasional pop stars passing by. Anyway, that's it. Janie and I look forward to joining you again next time. But until then, stay well, stay weird, stay different. Good night.
Black Shuck, the demon dog of East Anglia, is baying at the moon, which means it's time for us to go. You've been listening to the Weird Tales radio show with Charles Christian, your weekly fix of ghost stories, urban myths, magic, and folklore.
Keep in touch with us online at www.urbanfantasist.com or by email at urbanfantasist.icloud.com or on Twitter at Christian Uncut. Good night. Join us again next week for another edition of the Weird Tales Radio Show.